Hello everyone, my name is Michelle and I have a YouTube channel called College Buddy. And in today's video, guys, I'm going to talk about how I prepared for exams in college. Preparing for exams in college is going to be different than preparing for exams in high school. And I found this out through pretty much through trial and error. When I was a freshman in college, I was pretty much a blank slate. So everything was super duper new to me, but eventually I kind of learned to, you know, get the hang of college and things, they got better for me. Like I said, I'm going to tell you guys how I prepared for exams in college. And what inspired me to make this video is that I was reading a review on Google from that someone posted under a local university or college in my area, and this person talked about how their experience of preparing for exams were terrible, and they talked about their experience with their college exams, and that got me thinking about my college experience with exams, and I'm like, let me see what I can talk a little bit about. So, what I would do to prepare for college exams is on the very first day of my college classes, I would make sure that I looked over my syllabus and made sure to make a mental note of when we would be having exams in our classes. Um, Exams could be like midterms or final exams. Sometimes there may be dates that I'd have to know, like if there's going to be new research projects or if our class was going to require us to like go outside the classroom to do additional learning or whatever, whatnot, then I would make sure to kind of take mental notes of that. And then after my classes, then I would reread my syllabus, because when I'm first getting my syllabus on the first day of my classes, the teacher might spend maybe 5 minutes going over it and then kind of quickly move on to something else. And so this is why, I wouldn't be satisfied with 5 minutes of going over the syllabus. What I would do after my classes is I would go back, like when I got home, and I would read over the syllabuses and stuff like that, on the first day of my classes, just so that I can kind of refresh myself on like what I went over in class and then like, what the important dates were and things like that. And it helped me to get more familiar with my classes too, because typically you don't get your syllabus until the first day of your class. Sometimes for college classes, you can get a syllabus before the first day. However, what I found out is that those syllabuses that are offered before the class even starts are not reliable, because I've gone to the first day of my college classes and teachers will have changed the syllabuses. So they would have changed the exam dates and all types of stuff. And so that's why I would only rely on the syllabus that the teacher gave, not any syllabus that was online, because though, syllabus that's posted online could be old. And the syllabus that the teacher gives to me would be a new and updated copy, which would be more relevant and, would be the best guide for what was going to be happening in the class. And typically, a syllabus is going to tell you when the class is going to take place. It's going to tell you where the class is going to be taking place. It's going to give you a summary about what you're going to be going over in classes. It's going to tell you the important dates. It's going to tell you, what book you need for the class. It's going to tell you if you need any supporting materials or tools or whatever. If you need to take out any subscriptions or anything for a class, then, that's where you're going to find that out. And there's some stuff that's in the syllabus that, some stuff your teacher may have left out of the syllabus that, you have to be there to write down. And so that's always important to like write that in on your syllabus on the first day. At least that's what I did. Okay, another thing I would do to prepare for my exams in college is I would record exam dates as well as any other important dates in my monthly planner. This way, I would be aware of when my exams were going to be way ahead of time. And this helps a lot because in college, when you first start, you have to know when you go like to your classes and stuff because different ones of your classes are going to take place on different days at different times. And the thing is that you have to keep up as to when your classes are. In high school, I remember that we had A days and B days when it came to high school classes. So, on A days, we take these classes, and on B days, we take these other classes. Well, in college, you don't have A days and B days. You don't have that. Your classes can, depending on what class you have, it's going to take place on different days. And you have to keep track of that. Your instructor is not going to remind you about when your other class is going to take place because they're not teaching that class. So, it's on you to know when your class is going to be taking place, as well as you have to know what location your class is going to be held in. So, I had different classes, and sometimes, since I was a business major, some of my classes were held in the business school, and then some of them were held in other locations throughout campus. And so all my classes were not under one roof. Like in high school, all your classes are in one building. In college, your classes can be in multiple different locations. Each one of your classes could be in a different building. And those different buildings could be a vast difference away from each other. Okay. And so that's why if you've ever visited a college campus, you'll notice a lot of students kind of walking the campus because basically you have to find out where your class is. And typically that's what you do on the first day of your classes is you find out where they are. And sometimes when you're in a class, sometimes the location of your class may change or because maybe the class has been moved to a different room or whatever. So you have to be, make sure you're aware of that too. Okay. And so, yes, college is different than high school as far as where your classes are going to be concerned. And I remember some of my classes. So I had some classes that were Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Some classes that were Tuesday and Thursday. Some classes that were Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. Some classes that just maybe offered on a Monday. Monday and Friday. It just vastly was different. I didn't take any online classes or weekend classes or anything like that. I didn't take any night classes. I preferred to take like mostly day classes because it seemed like a majority of classes were offered during the day, and that was like the best time to kind of get scheduled in the classes. Night classes will be like 4 hours long, and I don't know about you, but I really didn't have the patience to be in a 4 hour class and it'd be at nighttime because that would be during a time like I would be like super tired. So that didn't really work very well for me. So going back to what I was saying, I would record my exam dates in my monthly planner that I received, and it helped me to get a bird's eye view of when the exams would be offered. So in my monthly planner, I'd write down when my classes were, so what days and times my classes were, as well as whenever there was any important things going on for my classes, like I would write down, test in history or, test in accounting or whatever, and I would write down important things that I needed to do for the class. If I needed to get a subscription for a class by a certain date, I'd make sure that I was aware of that and got that subscription before that particular date, like for a magazine or podcast or whatever, if that makes sense. Okay. So another thing I would do to prepare for my college exams is I would pre-plan my study time. So I would, like I said, I knew when my classes were, I knew when the exams were. And so what I would do is I would schedule time before the exam to study. So I don't mean that I would wait till 30 minutes before, the exam day to like study for my class exam. No, what I would do is that um, I would have study time a week in advance or 2 weeks in advance that I would, start studying for each class. And I might study for like 30 minutes, an hour, or hour and a half or so. And I would make sure that I would just pencil in time and I would pre-schedule that time in advance so that, once that time frame comes for that study time, then I know my time is going to studying. It's not going to, hanging out with friends or anything else. It's going to studying because I wanted to do well on my exams. And that's something you guys can do as well when it comes to college. Just pre-plan your study time. I would not recommend cramming. There were people who I knew that would cram for exams, and that does not help you do very well for college exams. And the thing is that depending on whatever like the topic was for your class, that could determine your exam. So like there are some classes you cannot wing the exam on. You can't wing it. You can't just say, okay, I'm just gonna, study for 30 minutes and I can get through passing this. No, because exams in college are different. I had a Spanish class, and for my Spanish classes, what I would have to do is the exam may be that I'd have to speak, I'd have to, speak Spanish, and then I'd have to, maybe another part of the exam may be to translate what somebody said into English during class. And so I had to prepare for that, and so exams, can take different forms. It might be a speaking exam, it may be a sit down test exam, it all depends. I mean, depending on what your class is, your exam could be different. I had classes and I had programming classes before, and those exams were where, I would have to like build programs on the computer. And so, you know, that could be a bit more different than what you guys are used to. Like I was saying, exams vary, and it's important to make sure you got the basics down and the understanding about, the basics, so that when it comes time for exams, then you can pass the exam. And one thing I made sure I would do too is I would go and talk to my teachers if I had any trouble with something. I would go to my teachers and talk to them and get clarification on things well before the exam so that, I had a good, foundation for what we were learning. So when it came to the exam, I was ready, you know. Okay. And then another thing I would do to prepare for exams is in college, I would go into a study room. So these are basically small rooms that they have. Some are bigger, some are smaller. But I would go to a study room in a library. So a study room it is a room that has a table and a couple of chairs. It has like a dry erase board, and then as well as it has like a light or whatever in there. And it's just like a room where you can go into the room and close the door. And then that's where, I would go in and study. I studied so much when it came to, you know, for my classes, that I had a favorite study room that I would go to. And if that study room was ever taken up by any other students, then I had other study rooms that I can go to, that were in various parts of the library and things. Now, during like midterms or final exams, typically around that period of time, those rooms can be booked up, typically because other students may already be in those rooms and stuff. And so in that case, if other students were kind of like hogging those rooms, then what I would do is that I would go to like classrooms that were empty, and then I would like go into a classroom and just like close the door, and then I would like start studying in there, and other students are not going to be doing that. And I would do this, I would do this maybe before my classes or whatever, or after my classes, or some evenings or whatever. Whenever I had time, then I would do that to prepare for exams when like the study rooms were taken up and things like that. When I was in high school, they didn't have any study rooms that we could go into and study, but in college they have a lot of them, which was super duper helpful. I would take public transportation, so I would take advantage of like doing like reading when I could, when I was like on the bus or on the train or whatever, to try and prepare myself for my classes and stuff. Sometimes it's easier than others because sometimes it's like really loud on public transportation. I like studying at home too, you know. That was helpful too. So I tried to take advantage of like studying as much as I possibly could when it came to college, and I made sure, of course, to do my homework too. You know, I kept up with that as well too. Another thing that I would do to prepare for my exams is I kept myself organized. This is something I learned really early in college. So it's a part of one of my college preparatory classes that I had to take as a conditional student in college. Then I learned how to be organized. So for each one of my classes, I had a binder, and my binder for each one of my classes, I would have a space for my syllabuses, I'd have a place for my notes, I have a place for my important papers. I'd have a space in my binders for just, I have different binders for each one of my classes, so I stayed organized all the time. And this way, I wouldn't be trying to dig through my book bag trying to figure out where my notes were, because I knew where my notes were because I had a designated place for my notes. And yes, I would tear my notes out of a notebook if I wrote them in a notebook. I really liked to use like the notebook paper, the college ruled paper, and take notes on that. And then after I finished my notes, then I would put them, you know, I'd put them into the binder, like 3-ring binder that I was using and stuff. And I also would make sure to keep my syllabus handy in my book bag, and you know, write down anything that was important that I needed to know for the next class in my planner and things like that. And that was like super helpful for me too. And I think that's what helped made me a bit more successful. Because you know, when you're organized, then you can find things. If you can find things, then you don't have to waste hours upon hours trying to find something that you can find within a couple seconds, you know. And that's important in college because there's a lot going on, you know, and you have to be aware of what's going on when and things like that, because exams can sneak up on you. It's not uncommon for you to have 2 exams on the same day, okay? It's not uncommon for that to happen. And so it's very important to, you know, make sure that you know that you're aware of that. And when final exams came, and I know I told you guys like I would pre-plan study time. Well, if I had, let's say if I have, you know, 5 classes, if I have 5 classes, I have to pre-plan study time for all of those classes, and I have to do that, you know, before my exams even happen. And like I said, if I have 2 classes with each of them having an exam, you know, then, you know, I have to make sure that I'm devoting time to each of those. You know, I was not the type to cram. I didn't do that. I made sure I devoted the time necessary to studying. And, you know, I could tell how much time I would need for studying for exams, because it depended on the coursework. Like if it was a class that I felt like I was doing really good in and stuff, and I, you know, got a good understanding of it, then I may not have to spend as much time on reviewing. But of course, I would go back in my textbook and reread information just in case to make sure I got it. I'd ask my teachers questions if I didn't understand something, so that when it came time for the exam, I was not totally lost. Okay. So, these are some of the things I would do to prepare for my exams in college. And I found it to be helpful, very much so. now in college. When it got to my senior year, there were some exams that I found that were a bit more challenging than the ones that I'd done prior. So in those regards, I would of course work in with a study group with kids in my class to try to prepare for exams. And this really saved me when it came to like a class that I had no idea about what was going on in the class, because the finance class that I was in, it like the information we're learning was like so big picture that like it was too much for me. Like it was way more than I wanted to learn. So, well, what I ended up doing was I just went ahead and basically I took advantage of that study group and agreed to meet with other students, even if it was an hour before class or an hour and a half before class, so that I can make sure, and I would do this on exam day too, make sure I showed up early and, got with my study group mates so that I would be able to make sure I could, bounce ideas off of them and stuff so I could know what I needed to do, so, to pass my exams. But yeah, so I've talked a lot about how I prepare for my exams and everything. I hope this has been super duper helpful for you guys. Thank you for watching. Bye.